The late October sun painted Portland's West Hills in shades of amber and gold, the kind of light that makes you believe in second chances. Margaret Sullivan, Maggie to everyone who mattered, sat on the porch swing of 2847 Maple Avenue, a white Victorian that looked like it had been plucked straight from a Hallmark movie. The brass numbers gleamed in the afternoon light, numbers she'd memorized during a dozen drive-bys before the bank finally handed her the keys 3 weeks ago. 40 years, 4 decades of double shifts, of heating up ramen noodles at 2 a.m. between patient rounds, of wearing scrubs so faded the original navy had turned a sad grayish blue. All of it for this, a house with a front porch and a garden where roses would bloom next spring. She cradled her Earl Grey tea, loose leaf, because she could afford the good stuff now, and let herself just breathe. The porch swing creaked in that satisfying way old things do, a sound that promised permanence. Through the lace curtains she'd hung last weekend, she could see the living room she'd furnished piece by careful piece. The cream-colored sofa from an estate sale, the mahogany coffee table she'd refinished herself, the built-in bookshelves finally holding all her nursing textbooks and the romance novels she'd never had time to read. "James," she whispered to the wind. "We did it, baby. We finally did it." 25 years he'd been gone, but sometimes in quiet moments like this, she swore she could feel him sitting right beside her. They'd been sitting on a park bench in downtown Portland when he first showed her the magazine spread, Victorian Dream Homes of the Pacific Northwest, his finger tracing the white picket fence, the wraparound porch. "Someday, Maggie," he'd said, that crooked smile lighting up his face. "Someday we'll have that white picket fence, that front porch where we grow old together." 2 weeks later, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months after that, she was a widow at 40 with an 8-year-old son and a mortgage on a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. But she'd done it. Raised David alone, put him through MYT, kept her promise to James. The house wasn't just wood and nails. It was proof that she hadn't wasted her life, that the sacrifices meant something. The peace lasted exactly 4 more minutes. She heard it before she saw it. The aggressive rumble of an engine, tires crunching on the gravel driveway way too fast. A white Mercedes SUV, one of those massive ones that screamed, "Look at me," swung into her driveway and stopped inches from her rose bush. Maggie's stomach dropped. She knew that car. More importantly, she knew the vanity plate. Brifluent. "Oh, hell no," she muttered, setting down her teacup. Brianna Fletcher Sullivan emerged from the driver's seat like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Head to toe Lululemon, the expensive kind with the tiny logo that cost 3 times as much, oversized Gucci sunglasses, and a Chanel bag that Maggie was 90% sure was a knockoff. Her daughter-in-law had that Instagram filter glow, the kind that looked perfect in photos but slightly unsettling in person. David climbed out of the passenger side, laptop bag over his shoulder, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Her son, her baby boy, 38 years old and still letting this woman drag him around like a show pony. Brianna didn't knock, didn't call ahead, just pulled out a key. When the hell did David give her a key? And waltzed straight through the front door like she owned the place. "Maggie, surprise?" Brianna's voice carried that fake cheerful tone that made Maggie's teeth ache. "We came to celebrate this gorgeous house." Maggie followed them inside, her calm evaporating. "Brianna, David, I don't remember inviting y'all over." "Oh, Maggie." Brianna waved a manicured hand dismissively, already eyeing the living room like she was mentally rearranging it. "Don't be so formal. We're family, aren't we?" "Family calls first," Maggie said, her voice cooler than the autumn air outside. "Family asks permission." David finally spoke up, looking uncomfortable. "Mom, I'm sorry, we should have called. Brianna thought we should plan something special." Brianna cut in, pulling an iPad from her designer bag with the flourish of a magician revealing a trick. "Which is why I've taken the liberty of organizing your housewarming party." The words hit Maggie like a slap. "My what?" Brianna's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Your housewarming party. This Saturday. I've already sent out the invitations. 50 guests, all the important people. Uncle Ray, Pastor Helen, everyone from the community, plus my circle. Jessica Grant alone has 100,000 followers, Maggie. This is going to put you on the map." Maggie felt the room tilt slightly. She gripped the back of her sofa. You sent invitations? To my house? Without asking me? I'm asking now. Brianna laughed like it was all a cute misunderstanding. She turned the iPad around, showing Maggie a glossy digital invitation with professional photos of her house. Photos Brianna must have taken during some previous uninvited visit. The text made Maggie's blood run cold. You're invited. Luxury housewarming celebration, hosted by Brianna Fletcher Sullivan at the Sullivan Estate, 2847 Maple Avenue. Not Maggie's name, not honoring Margaret Sullivan, just Brianna's name, like this was her house, her achievement. The hashtags at the bottom were the final insult. Hashtag Brianna Lifestyle, hashtag Luxury Housewarming, hashtag Influencer Life, hashtag Sullivan Estate. Sullivan Estate? Maggie's voice came out strangled. This is a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, not a damn estate. Branding, Maggie. It's all about branding. Brianna was scrolling through her phone now, not even looking up. Anyway, I've planned everything. It's going to be absolutely epic. Brianna. Maggie's voice dropped into that register she used to use on the hospital floor when a patient was about to do something monumentally stupid. This is my house. Not yours. Not David's. Mine. I bought it. My name is on the deed. And I did not agree to this. David stepped forward, and Maggie saw it in his eyes, that pleading look that meant he was about to take Brianna's side. Again. Mom, come on. Brianna's been planning this for days. She's already sent the invites. Can't you just help out? Just this once? Just this once. The same words he'd used when Brianna wanted to borrow $5,000 for a business opportunity that never materialized. The same words when she needed them to co-sign a car lease. The same words every single time. David, Maggie said quietly, this is my home, not a venue for your wife's Instagram photo shoot. Brianna's mask slipped for just a second. Her eyes went hard, calculating. Then the smile snapped back into place. Maggie, I get it. You've worked so hard for this house, which is exactly why we should celebrate it. Don't you want people to see what an amazing, generous woman you are? A devoted mother? A pillar of the community? The manipulation was so obvious, it was almost insulting. Almost. Or, Brianna continued, her voice dropping into something that sounded almost like concern, would you rather people think you're, I don't know, stingy? Antisocial? One of those bitter old women who won't let their family enjoy anything? There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. The emotional blackmail disguised as care. Maggie looked at her son. Really looked at him. Saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped, how he couldn't quite meet her gaze. When had he become this person? When had the boy who used to defend her against bullies become the man who stood silent while his wife insulted her? Fine, Maggie heard herself say, the word tasting like ash. What exactly did you plan? Brianna's smile turned triumphant. She tapped her iPad and a document appeared. 3 full pages of typed demands. Okay, so here's the menu I've designed. It's going to be a traditional Southern feast. You know, soul food. Really authentic. Maggie took the iPad, her hands shaking slightly as she read. Menu requirements. Southern fried chicken, 100 pieces, bone-in, perfectly crispy. Mac and cheese, 5-pound tray, extra sharp cheddar, breadcrumb topping. Collard greens, traditional preparation with ham hocks. Cornbread, 3 trays, honey butter on the side. Peach cobbler, 4 large trays, vanilla ice cream. Shrimp and grits, creamy with andouille sausage. BBQ ribs, 2 full racks, dry rub. Sweet potato pie, traditional recipe. Black-eyed peas, potato salad, deviled eggs, 5 dozen. Hush puppies, fried green tomatoes, buttermilk biscuits, red velvet cake. 15 dishes, Maggie said flatly. For 50 people, by Saturday. That's 4 days from now. I know you can do it, Brianna chirped. You're an amazing cook. David's always bragging about your meals. Maggie scrolled down. It got worse. Decoration requirements. Fresh flower arrangements. Minimum 20 vases, white roses and peonies. White linen tablecloths, no stains, properly pressed. Crystal glassware. Champagne flutes, wine glasses, water goblets. String lights in the garden. Warm white, professionally installed. Centerpieces for each table. Welcome sign at the entrance. Estimated cost, $3,500 to $4,000. Maggie's pension check was $2,800 a month. And one more thing. Brianna reached into her bag and pulled out a folded black garment. She shook it out with a flourish. It was an apron. Black, high-quality fabric, with embroidered text across the chest in silver thread. Sullivan Estate Private Chef. Isn't it gorgeous? I had it custom made. Brianna held it up against Maggie like she was showing off a prom dress. You'll wear this while you're serving. I've told my followers that I have a family chef who does traditional Southern cuisine. They're so excited to see you in action. The words hit Maggie like ice water. You told people I'm your private chef? Well, not my chef exactly. The estate's chef. It sounds more professional, don't you think? Brianna. Maggie's voice was deadly quiet. I am a registered nurse with 40 years of experience. I am not anyone's chef. I am not your employee. I am not a prop for your social media. Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. Brianna rolled her eyes. It's just one afternoon, Maggie. One afternoon of you helping out your family. Is that really too much to ask? Yes, Maggie said. It is. David finally found his spine, or what was left of it. Mom, please. Brianna's already sent the invitations. People are expecting this. Can't you just do this for us? For me? And there it was. The guilt trip. The weaponized love. Maggie looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. When had his eyes gotten so tired? When had he started flinching before his wife spoke? I need to think about this, Maggie said, her voice hollow. Think fast, Brianna said brightly, already heading toward the door. Party Saturday at 2 p.m. Oh, and I'll need you to start prepping Thursday. Some of these dishes are better when they sit overnight. I'll text you the detailed timeline. She air-kissed Maggie's cheek, the audacity, and sailed out the front door. David lingered for a moment, opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then followed his wife like a beaten dog. Maggie stood alone in her living room, in the house she'd spent 40 years earning, holding an apron that said private chef, and felt something inside her crack. The clock on Maggie's nightstand read 2:47 a.m. She'd been staring at the ceiling for 3 hours, her mind spinning through the same thoughts on an endless loop. The bedroom was her favorite room in the house. She'd painted it a soft sage green, hung sheer white curtains that filtered the moonlight into something magical. The antique quilt James's mother had made covered the bed. This room was supposed to be her sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a prison. She got up, pulled on her robe, and padded downstairs to the kitchen. Made herself chamomile tea she knew she wouldn't drink. Sat at the kitchen table James had built with his own hands in their first apartment, the one piece of furniture she'd carried through every move, every apartment, every year of struggle. Her fingers traced the familiar grooves in the wood. How many nights had she sat here, balancing checkbooks by lamplight while David slept? How many meals had she stretched to last one more day? How many times had she chosen between paying the electric bill and buying herself a new pair of shoes? The memories came unbidden, vivid as yesterday. 25 years ago, Riverside Park, spring afternoon. James sat beside her on the park bench, their fingers intertwined, a glossy magazine spread across his lap. He was still healthy then, still had that spark in his eyes, that easy laugh that made her feel like anything was possible. Look at this one, Maggie. His finger traced the photograph of a white Victorian house with a wraparound porch and a garden bursting with flowers. This is it. This is the one. James, honey, that house probably costs $500,000. So, we'll save up. I'll get that promotion. You'll finish your RN certification. 10 years, maybe 15, and we'll have our dream house. He turned to her, his smile so bright it hurt to look at. Somewhere we can grow old together, where we'll sit on the porch and watch our grandkids play in the yard. Grandkids? Maggie laughed. David's only 8. Then we better start saving now. 2 weeks later, he started getting the headaches. 3 weeks later, the diagnosis. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. 6 months, maybe 9 if they were lucky. They got 7. She remembered the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic and the mechanical breathing of machines. James, skeletal and pale, his hand in hers. Promise me, he'd whispered, his voice barely there. Promise me you'll get that house, Maggie. Promise me you'll be happy. I promise, she'd sobbed. I promise. And take care of our boy. Make sure he knows. Make sure he knows his dad loved him. He knows. He knows, baby. James had smiled then, peaceful. Good. That's good. His grip loosened. Love you, Mags. Always have, always will. He died 3 hours later, holding her hand. Maggie wiped her eyes, surprised to find them wet. Even after 25 years, the grief could still ambush her. She'd kept her promise, though. Raised David alone, worked doubles, triples when she could get them, learned to fix the car herself from YouTube videos, made David's Halloween costumes by hand, never missed a school play, a parent-teacher conference, a baseball game. Put him through MIT without loans, watched him graduate summa cum laude, his face shining with pride, held him when his first girlfriend broke his heart, helped him move into his first apartment, danced with him at his wedding to Brianna, pushing down the uneasy feeling in her gut because her son was happy, and that's all that mattered. Right? The tea had gone cold. Maggie dumped it in the sink and stood at the window, looking out at her garden in the moonlight. When did I lose him, James? She whispered to the ghost of her husband. When did our boy become someone who'd let his wife treat his mother like hired help? The house was silent. No answers came. But something else did. A thought, creeping in cold and unwelcome. What if this isn't about the party at all? What if Brianna wants something else? That SUV wasn't cheap. Neither were the designer clothes, the influencer lifestyle. David made good money as a software engineer, but not that good. So where was it all coming from? Maggie walked back upstairs, but instead of going to her bedroom, she headed to the guest room, the one David and Brianna used when they visited. She flipped on the light. David's laptop bag was still there, tossed on the bed where he'd left it earlier. She shouldn't. It was an invasion of privacy. But something, instinct, maternal intuition, whatever, made her unzip the bag. Insurance paperwork, Brianna had said. Just needed to find some insurance paperwork. Maggie pulled out the stack of folders. Most were work-related, code reviews, project timelines. But one folder, light blue, was labeled Personal, Important. Her hands shook as she opened it. The first document made her breath catch. Business Registration Certificate for Fletcher Digital Marketing, LLC. Registered address, 2847 Maple Avenue, Portland, Oregon. Her address, her house. She flipped to the next page. IRS Notice of Federal Tax Lien. Amount owed $47,000. Property seizure authorized within 90 days if not resolved. Next page. Credit card statements. 5 different cards, all in David's name, all with balances in the 5 figures. Charges for Hermes, Cartier, Louis Vuitton, first-class flights to Dubai, 5-star hotels in Paris. Total debt, $89,000. Maggie's vision blurred. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and took photos of every single document. Evidence. She'd need evidence. Because now she understood. This wasn't about a party. This wasn't about Instagram photos or showing off. Brianna was stealing her house. Slowly, methodically, legally. Using it as collateral for a fake business. Racking up debt in David's name. And when everything collapsed, because it would collapse, Maggie's house would be the first asset seized. The house she'd spent 40 years earning. The promise she'd kept to James. Brianna was trying to steal it all. Maggie sat on the guest bed, surrounded by evidence of her son's financial ruin, and felt something shift inside her. The hurt crystallized into something harder, something colder. Oh, honey, she thought, carefully putting every document back exactly where she'd found it. You picked the wrong woman to mess with. The party was Saturday. Today was Tuesday. That gave Maggie 4 days to plan. And Margaret Sullivan had always been very, very good at planning. The First Baptist Church of Portland sat on a hill overlooking the city, its white steeple piercing the gray morning sky. Maggie had been coming here for 30 years, through James's funeral, through David's childhood, through every crisis and triumph. These walls knew her secrets, her prayers, her fears. This Sunday, she needed them more than ever. Pastor Helen Morrison was holding court in the fellowship hall after service, dispensing hugs and wisdom in equal measure. At 60, she was a force of nature. Silver hair worn natural, reading glasses on a beaded chain, the kind of woman who could quote scripture and curse out injustice in the same breath. Beside her stood Diane Walsh, Maggie's other ride or die. Diane had retired from practicing law 5 years ago, but she still had the sharp eyes and sharper mind of a courtroom veteran. The 3 of them had been friends since their kids were in elementary school together. Maggie caught Helen's eye and gave the signal. a subtle nod toward the pastor's private office. 5 minutes later, they were sequestered away from prying ears. Helen locked the door. Diane pulled out her reading glasses. Both women looked at Maggie with concern. "All right, baby," Helen said, settling into her chair. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What's going on?" Maggie pulled out her phone, hands still shaking from 3 sleepless nights. "I need help, and I need you both to promise me this stays between us." "Attorney-client privilege," Diane said immediately. "Even though I'm retired, it still applies." "Pastoral confidentiality," Helen added. "Talk to us, Maggie." The story spilled out. The uninvited visit, the party demands, the apron that said private chef, and finally, the documents she'd found. Maggie showed them the photos on her phone, watching their faces shift from concern to shock to cold fury. Diane took the phone, scrolling through the evidence with the precision of someone who'd built a career on details. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. "This is fraud, identity theft, tax evasion. Maggie, this is federal crime territory." "How bad is it?" Maggie's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Bad. Real bad." Diane zoomed in on the IRS notice. "If this tax lien isn't resolved, they can and will seize assets. And since Brianna registered her fake business at your address, your house is first in line." "My house." Maggie felt the room tilt slightly. "The house I just bought." "The house you worked 40 damn years for," Helen said, her voice tight with anger. "That girl is trying to rob you blind." "She's already robbed David," Diane pointed out. $89,000 in credit card debt. These charges go back almost 2 years. Designer bags, luxury trips. This woman's been running a scam the whole time she's been married to your son. Maggie slumped in her chair. "David has no idea, does he?" "Probably not. The statements are probably going to an address he doesn't check, or Brianna intercepts the mail." Diane's expression was grim. "I've seen this before, Maggie. Financial abuse. It's more common than people think." "So what do I do?" Maggie looked between her 2 oldest friends. "Because I can't just sit back and watch her destroy my son and steal my home." Helen leaned forward, her expression fierce. "First we pray, then we plan. Because, baby, if there's one thing I know about you, it's that Margaret Sullivan doesn't go down without a fight." "Amen to that," Diane said. "But Maggie, I need to ask, how far are you willing to go? Because if we pursue this legally, it could mean criminal charges. For Brianna, yes, but David might get caught in the crossfire." The question hung in the air like smoke. "I don't want to destroy my son," Maggie said quietly. "I want to save him." "There's a difference. Then we need to be smart, strategic." Diane pulled out a legal pad. Old habits died hard. "First thing tomorrow, I'm calling a private investigator I trust. We need to know exactly who Brianna Fletcher Sullivan really is." "You think she's done this before?" Maggie asked. "Honey, grifters don't start big. They practice. I'd bet my retirement fund this isn't her first rodeo." Helen drummed her fingers on the desk, thinking. "What about Uncle Ray? Brianna put him on that party invitation, right? As a VIP guest?" Maggie nodded. "Raymond Sullivan, James's brother." "The real estate mogul," Diane said with a knowing smile. "The one who doesn't suffer fools." "Oh, Brianna's no fool," Helen said. "She's playing a long game. She wants Ray at that party for a reason." "Money," Maggie said, the pieces clicking together. "She wants him to invest in her fake business." "Bingo," Diane made a note on her pad. "So here's what I'm thinking. We let the party happen." Maggie's head snapped up. "What?" "Hear me out." Diane's eyes gleamed with the tactical brilliance that had made her legendary in Portland courtrooms. "Brianna's setting a trap for herself. She's invited 50 witnesses to her fraud. Uncle Ray, Pastor Helen, half the community. They're all going to see her try to scam a 70-year-old man out of investment money for a company that doesn't exist. And when she crashes and burns," Helen continued, catching on, "everyone sees who she really is. No he said, she said. No Maggie's just a bitter mother-in-law. Just pure public exposure." "But the food," Maggie protested. "The decorations. She's demanding I spend thousands of dollars I don't have." Diane smiled, sharp as a knife. "Who said anything about you spending money?" Monday afternoon, Diane's phone rang. She put it on speaker so Maggie and Helen could hear. "Ms. Walsh, this is Jake Patterson. You asked me to run a background check on Brianna Marie Fletcher Sullivan." "That's right, Jake. What'd you find?" Papers rustled on the other end of the line. Well, ma'am, you were right to be suspicious. This lady's got a history. Maggie's stomach clenched. How bad? Full name, Brianna Marie Fletcher, born in Reno, Nevada, 32 years ago. Grew up in a lower-income household. Single mom, 3 siblings. Dropped out of University of Nevada, Reno after sophomore year, citing financial hardship. That's not a crime, Helen said quietly. No, ma'am, it's not. But here's where it gets interesting. More papers shuffling. 2016, shoplifting charge in Las Vegas, dismissed with community service. 2017, another shoplifting charge, this time in Portland, also dismissed. 2018, check fraud, bounced checks at 3 different stores totaling about $1,500. That one got settled out of court. Maggie closed her eyes. Jesus. Wait, there's more. In 2019, Brianna married a man named Robert Patterson. No relation to me, Jake added with a dry chuckle. Small business owner in Seattle. Wedding was at the courthouse, no big ceremony. Marriage lasted 18 months. What happened? Diane asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Mr. Patterson filed for divorce in 2020, citing irreconcilable differences. But I pulled the civil court records. Robert also filed a police report alleging that Brianna had opened multiple credit cards in his name without permission, racking up about $40,000 in debt. He claimed she forged his signature on loan applications. The room went silent. Did he press charges? Diane's voice was ice. Tried to. DA declined to prosecute. Insufficient evidence. Robert's lawyer told me off the record that Brianna was very good at covering her tracks. By the time Robert figured out what was happening, she'd already drained their joint account and disappeared. He declared bankruptcy 6 months later. Maggie felt sick. This wasn't just a scam. This was a pattern. A practiced pattern. And the social media presence? Helen asked. The influencer stuff? Jake laughed, bitter. Smoke and mirrors, ma'am. I ran analytics on her Instagram and that friend of hers, Jessica Grant. About 70% of their followers are bots, fake accounts purchased from Click Farms. The engagement's all artificial. I found invoices showing Brianna paid a company called Influence Boost $5,000 to make her look legitimate. So the whole thing's a fraud, Maggie said numbly. The lifestyle, the followers, the business, all of it. All of it, Jake confirmed. This woman is a professional con artist, and from what Ms. Walsh told me about your situation, Mrs. Sullivan, you're not her first victim. You're just her latest mark. After Jake hung up, the 3 women sat in stunned silence. Finally, Helen spoke. Maggie, I know this hurts, but you need to hear this. It's not your fault. It's not David's fault either. These people, grifters, con artists, they're professionals. They know exactly how to manipulate good people. David's going to be devastated, Maggie whispered, when he finds out who he married. Which is why we need to be careful, Diane said. If we come at Brianna too hard, too fast, David might dig in his heels. Defend her out of pride, out of shame. We need him to see the truth himself. How? Maggie looked at her friends helplessly. Diane's smile was predatory. We let her hang herself with her own rope, and I think I know exactly how to do it. The Riverside Country Club sat on the banks of the Willamette River, all manicured lawns and old money discretion. Raymond Sullivan had been a member for 40 years, back when he was just a kid with a real estate license and a dream. Now, at 70, he was one of Portland's most successful property developers. He'd also been James's baby brother, the one who'd given the eulogy at James's funeral with tears streaming down his face, the one who'd quietly paid for David's college textbooks when he thought Maggie wasn't looking. Ray loved Maggie like a sister, and he'd disliked Brianna from the moment David brought her to that first family dinner. That girl's got dollar signs in her eyes, he'd told Maggie privately. Mark my words, Mags, she's trouble. He'd been right. Maggie hated that he'd been right. Now she sat across from him in the club's dining room, watching him read through the documents she'd brought. His face darkened with every page. That manipulative little... He cut himself off, remembering they were in public. Maggie, this is bad. This is really, really bad. I know. Does David know? No, and I need to keep it that way. For now. Ray leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. What do you need from me? I need you to play along, Maggie said. At the party, Brianna's going to pitch you some investment opportunity, probably her fake marketing company. I need you to act interested. String her along. You want me to be bait? I want her to incriminate herself in front of witnesses, in front of David. Ray studied her for a long moment. You know this might blow up in your face, right? David might hate you for this. Better he hates me alive than loves me while I'm drowning in her debt. Maggie's voice didn't waver. I kept my promise to James. I raised our son, gave him every opportunity, but I will not let this woman destroy everything we built. James would be proud of you, Ray said softly. Stubborn as hell, but proud. Will you help me? Ray's smile was sharp. Honey, I'm going to enjoy this. Wednesday evening, 3 days before the party, Maggie was in her garden, pruning roses in the fading light, when she heard the front door open. She hadn't given Brianna permission to come over, but apparently, permission was optional. Maggie, we need to talk. Brianna's voice was different. No fake sweetness, no Instagram chirp, just cold, hard reality. Maggie set down her pruning shears and walked inside. Brianna stood in the living room, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. I know you've been digging into my background, Brianna said without preamble. Maggie's heart kicked into overdrive, but she kept her face neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the crap, Maggie. Jessica saw you at that PI's office on Monday, and I know you've been talking to Uncle Ray. Brianna pulled out her phone. So let's stop playing games. She tapped the screen and a video started playing. It was David, sitting at their kitchen table, looking exhausted and defeated. The timestamp showed it was from 6 months ago. On the video, David's voice cracked. I forged Mom's signature on the refinance papers. I know it was wrong, but Brianna said we needed the money for the investment, and Mom was in the hospital, and I just did it. God, I'm so stupid. The video ended. Maggie felt like she'd been punched in the gut. That investment? Brianna's smile was all venom. Never existed. The money went straight into my accounts. And if this video goes to the police, your precious baby boy goes to prison for fraud. Maggie's hands clenched into fists. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting myself. Brianna stepped closer. Here's the deal, Maggie. You throw this party. Perfect food, perfect decorations, perfect everything. You help me pitch Uncle Ray on investing $200,000 in my marketing company. And after that, we go our separate ways. You get to keep your house, David stays out of prison, and I get what I need to start over somewhere new. And if I don't? Brianna shrugged. I send this video to the FBI. David gets charged with forgery, identity theft, mortgage fraud. That's 5 to 10 years in federal prison, minimum. All because he was stupid enough to trust his wife. Her smile widened. Your choice, Mom. Every instinct screamed at Maggie to lunge at this woman, to throw her out, to call the police right now. But she forced herself to breathe, to think. Brianna had just made a critical mistake. She'd shown her hand too early. Okay, Maggie said, her voice eerily calm. You win. Brianna blinked, surprised. Really? Really. I'll do everything you want. The party will be perfect. I'll help you charm Uncle Ray. I'll play the doting mother-in-law. Maggie met Brianna's eyes, her gaze steady. But I have one condition. What? Let me do this my way. Professionally. I'll hire caterers, hire decorating staff. You just show up and shine. Deal? Brianna studied her suspiciously. Why would you do that? Because, Maggie said, I'm tired. I'm 65 years old, Brianna. I don't have the energy to fight you anymore. If this is what it takes to protect my son, then fine. I'll give you what you want. The lie tasted bitter, but it worked. Brianna's suspicion melted into smug satisfaction. Smart choice, Maggie. See? We can get along when you're reasonable. She headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Maggie, if you try anything cute, that video goes viral. David's career, his reputation, his life, all gone. Remember that. The door closed. Maggie stood alone in her living room, shaking with rage. But underneath the rage was something else. Something cold and calculating. Brianna thought she'd won. Thought she'd cornered Maggie, forced her into submission. What Brianna didn't understand was that Margaret Sullivan had spent 40 years in nursing. She'd dealt with violent patients, demanding doctors, impossible situations. She'd learned to stay calm under pressure, to think 3 steps ahead, to outmaneuver people who underestimated her. Brianna had just underestimated her. Big time. Maggie pulled out her phone and called Diane. Change of plans, she said when Diane answered. We're not just exposing her. We're burning her entire operation to the ground. What happened? Maggie told her about the blackmail, the video, Brianna's ultimatum. When she finished, Diane was quiet for a long moment. Then, that stupid, arrogant girl just committed a felony. Extortion? Extortion. And we have her on recording, right? Please tell me you were recording. Maggie smiled grimly. Every word. There's a security camera in my living room. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do. Thursday morning, 2 days before the party, Maggie sat at her kitchen table with Diane, Helen, and Tyler and Amber Richards, the young couple from next door who'd become unexpected allies. So let me get this straight, Tyler said, looking at the planning document Diane had drawn up. We're going to let Brianna think everything's going perfectly, and then pull the rug out at the last second? Exactly, Diane said. Maggie will appear to cooperate. She'll tell Brianna the caterers are hired, the decorations are ordered, everything's on track. But in reality? Amber asked. In reality, nothing's happening. No caterers, no decorations. The house will be completely empty. Maggie's voice was steady. Brianna will show up Saturday expecting a perfect party, and instead she'll find nothing. And you'll be where? Tyler asked. Paradise Cove Resort, about 2 hours south, with a perfect alibi, time-stamped photos and witnesses. Maggie pulled out her laptop, showing them the reservation confirmation. I leave Friday night, return Sunday morning. Helen grinned, leaving Brianna to handle 50 angry guests and explain why there's no food, no furniture, and no party. But what about the video? Amber looked worried. The one of David? If she releases it, she won't, Diane interrupted. Because by Saturday afternoon, we'll have her on multiple felonies: extortion, fraud, identity theft. The DA's office is already building a case based on the evidence Maggie provided. They're just waiting for the right moment to strike. Which is? Tyler asked. Maggie's smile was cold. When she tries to pitch Uncle Ray for that $200,000 investment, in front of 50 witnesses, with Ray wearing a wire. The room fell silent as the brilliance of the plan sank in. Holy shit, Tyler breathed. You're going to take her down in public. I'm going to let her take herself down, Maggie corrected. All I'm doing is removing my support. Everything else? That's on her. What about David? Helen asked softly. How's he going to handle this? Maggie's expression faltered. I don't know, but I'd rather have him hate me and alive than love me while his wife destroys his life. He won't hate you, Amber said firmly. My mom was in an abusive relationship once. Financial abuse like this. She said the hardest part was admitting she'd been fooled, but after, she thanked the people who helped her see the truth. I hope you're right, Maggie whispered. Diane checked her watch. Okay, timeline. Tomorrow, Maggie calls Brianna and confirms everything's on track. Tomorrow night, Maggie leaves for the resort. Saturday morning, Brianna arrives to an empty house. Saturday afternoon, chaos. And Sunday? Tyler asked. Sunday, we pick up the pieces. Maggie stood, her jaw set. And we start rebuilding, whatever that looks like. Saturday, 1 p.m. The guests started arriving. Brianna stood in Maggie's empty living room, her Instagram-perfect smile cracking at the edges. The house was a ghost town, no furniture except a few pieces bolted to the walls, no decorations, no catering set up. Just empty rooms echoing with her increasingly frantic phone calls. What do you mean you have no record of my order? She hissed into her phone, pacing across the hardwood floor. I called you Tuesday. Yes, I'm sure it was your company. No, Hello? Hello? They'd hung up on her, the third catering company in an hour. Through the front window, she could see cars pulling up. Uncle Ray's black Mercedes, Pastor Helen's sensible Toyota, a cluster of luxury vehicles, her influencer friends ready for content. And she had nothing. No food, no drinks, no party. David stood in the doorway looking shell-shocked, his phone pressed to his ear. Mom's not answering. It goes straight to voicemail. No shit, David, Brianna snapped. Your crazy mother sabotaged everything. Don't call her crazy, David said quietly, but without conviction. The doorbell rang. Then again, and again. Brianna smoothed her designer dress, a white Zimmerman number that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and plastered on her brightest smile. Okay, we can fix this. We'll order delivery. Pizza, Chinese, whatever. We'll make it work. For 50 people? David looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Babe, that's gonna cost—" "I don't care what it costs!" Her voice pitched up into something shrill. "Just make it happen." The next 30 minutes were a masterclass in chaos. Uncle Raymond Sullivan arrived first, impeccable in a navy suit, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. He took one look at the empty room, the absence of any party setup, and his eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "Brianna," he said, his voice dangerously pleasant. "Interesting aesthetic choice. Very minimalist." "Uncle Ray, hi." Brianna air-kissed his cheeks, her laugh brittle. "We're going for a more casual vibe than planned. Intimate, you know? Less is more." "Less is certainly what you've got," Ray observed, scanning the barren living room. Pastor Helen Morrison swept in next, resplendent in her Sunday best, a lavender dress and matching hat. Her eyes, sharp as ever, took in everything: the empty food tables, the lack of decorations, Brianna's desperate smile. "Where's Maggie?" Helen asked immediately. "Oh, she had to step out," Brianna chirped. "Last-minute emergency, but she'll be back soon." "Mm-hmm." Helen's tone suggested she didn't believe a word. She exchanged a knowing glance with Uncle Ray. The influencer crew arrived like a storm. Jessica Grant and 5 others, all wielding phones like weapons, ready to document everything for their followers. They stopped dead in their tracks at the threshold. "Girl," Jessica said slowly, taking in the scene. "What is this?" We're still setting up," Brianna insisted. "For a party that starts in an hour?" One of the other influencers, a girl named Madison with pink hair, looked around in disbelief. "Brianna, there's literally nothing here. No food, no drinks, not even music." "It's coming! The caterers are just running late." But Jessica was already backing toward the door, her professional instincts kicking in. "Yeah, I'm gonna head out. This isn't the vibe you promised. Sorry, babe." "Jess, wait." But Jessica was gone, followed by 3 of the other influencers. Only Madison and one guy, Tyler something, a wannabe fitness influencer, stayed, mostly because they'd driven together. More guests trickled in over the next 20 minutes. Diane Walsh, looking elegant and utterly unsurprised. Tyler and Amber from next door, playing their parts perfectly, wide-eyed and confused. Members of Pastor Helen's congregation, David's former co-workers, all of them expecting a sophisticated housewarming party. What they got was an empty house and Brianna's increasingly desperate excuses. The caterer had a fire in their kitchen. The decorating company sent everything to the wrong address. Maggie was supposed to handle this part. By 1:45 p.m., David had managed to order $400 worth of KFC and Popeye's chicken, which arrived in greasy buckets that Brianna tried unsuccessfully to arrange on paper plates like they were gourmet appetizers. Uncle Ray stood in the corner, sipping water from a paper cup, watching the disaster unfold with the detached interest of someone watching a nature documentary. This was going to be good. At exactly 2:30 p.m., the massive TV in the living room flickered to life. Everyone jumped. Brianna froze with a chicken wing halfway to a guest's plate. The screen showed a woman in a white spa robe, sitting on a balcony overlooking crystal blue water. Behind her, palm trees swayed in a gentle breeze. She held a champagne flute and looked more relaxed than she had in years. "Hello, everyone," Maggie Sullivan said, her voice calm and clear through the TV's speakers. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for today's party." The room went silent. Every eye turned to the screen. "What the hell?" Brianna whispered. Maggie smiled, and it was nothing like her usual warm expression. This smile was cold steel wrapped in velvet. "I know many of you are confused about what's happening today, so let me clear some things up." She took a sip of champagne, letting the moment breathe. "First, I want to clarify something important. This house, 2847 Maple Avenue, is my house. Not Brianna's, not David's, mine. I bought it with money I saved over 40 years of working as a registered nurse. Every single dollar came from my paychecks, my overtime, my sacrifice." Uncle Ray crossed his arms, his expression grim. "Second," Maggie continued, "I am not, nor have I ever been, anyone's private chef." That was a lie Brianna told her social media followers to make herself look more important than she is. "Oh my God," Madison whispered, phone out, recording everything. "Now let's talk about why I'm not there today." Maggie's voice hardened. "Uncle Ray, I need to tell you something important. Did you know that Brianna registered a business called Fletcher Digital Marketing LLC using my home address?" Ray's jaw clenched. Several guests gasped. She did it without my knowledge or permission. And that business? It owes the IRS $47,000 in back taxes. When those taxes don't get paid, the IRS will seize assets, starting with my house. Brianna's face had gone from spray tan bronze to paper white. That's not... She's lying. I have documentation, Maggie said calmly, as if she could hear the protest. I've already filed reports with the FBI and the IRS, but there's more. She set down her champagne glass and leaned forward, her eyes finding the camera with laser precision. David, honey, I need you to listen carefully. Do you know how many credit cards are open in your name? From somewhere off screen, David's strangled voice. What? 7 cards, sweetheart, with a combined balance of $89,000. Hermes bags, Cartier jewelry, first-class trips to Dubai and Paris, all charged to cards your wife opened using forged signatures. That's a lie, Brianna shrieked. She's making this up. David, baby, she's trying to turn you against me. But David had gone very still, his face ashen. I have the statements, Maggie continued relentlessly. I have photos of the forged signatures. The FBI has all of it. But David, honey, there's something else you need to know. The camera shifted slightly, and Maggie's expression softened with genuine pain. Your wife's real name is Brianna Marie Fletcher. This is her second marriage. Her first husband was a man named Robert Patterson in Seattle. She did the same thing to him. Forged documents, racked up debt, nearly destroyed his life. He filed for bankruptcy after she left him. Pastor Helen shook her head slowly, her expression a mix of sadness and vindication. But the thing is, Maggie said, I'm not telling you this to hurt you, David. I'm telling you this because I love you, because you're my son, and I will not stand by and watch someone destroy you the way she destroyed Robert Patterson. Brianna lunged for the TV power button, but Uncle Ray stepped in front of her, his voice like granite. Touch that TV and I'll have you arrested for destruction of property. Sit down and shut up. Brianna stumbled backward, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Maggie's voice filled the room again. Brianna, I know you're listening. You thought you could blackmail me with that video of David, the one where he admits to forging my signature on the refinance documents. David's head whipped toward Brianna. You what? Here's the thing about blackmail, Maggie continued. It's a felony, federal crime, and attempting to extort someone using illegally recorded video? That's another felony. I have you on my security camera making those threats. The FBI has that too. Uncle Ray pulled out his phone, and Brianna saw the wire clipped to his collar. He'd been recording everything. So here's what's going to happen, Maggie said, her voice quiet but absolute. Brianna, you have 48 hours to remove yourself and your belongings from my home. Legal papers will be served Monday morning. You'll be hearing from law enforcement shortly after that. Maggie's gaze seemed to find David through the screen. Baby boy, I know this hurts. I know you feel betrayed and embarrassed and angry. You can be angry at me if you need to be. But please, please understand. I did this because I love you. Because you deserve better than someone who sees you as a meal ticket. Her voice cracked, just slightly. Your father would want me to protect you. So that's what I'm doing. The screen went black. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then David turned to Brianna, and his voice was so cold it could have frozen hell. Get out. Baby, please, I can't explain. Get out! David's hands were shaking. Everything she said, it's true, isn't it? All of it. Brianna's mask finally shattered. You don't understand. I did it for us. For our future. You did it for yourself. David's voice broke. My mom worked herself to the bone to raise me. She sacrificed everything. And you tried to steal the one thing she earned. The one promise she made to my dad. Tears streamed down his face, but his voice stayed steady. We're done. I want a divorce, and I never want to see you again. David, I said get out! Uncle Ray moved toward Brianna like a shark circling prey. Young lady, I suggest you leave now, before I call the police myself. Brianna grabbed her Chanel bag, real or fake, nobody cared anymore, and stumbled toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back, mascara streaking her face. You're all going to regret this, she spat. I'll sue. I'll destroy all of you. With what money? Diane Walsh asked mildly, speaking for the first time. From what Maggie tells me, you're about $140,000 in debt and facing multiple felony charges. Good luck finding a lawyer who'll take that case." Brianna's face contorted with rage and humiliation. Then she fled, her designer heels clicking frantically down the front steps. The slam of her car door echoed through the neighborhood. Tires squealed as she peeled out of the driveway. The remaining guests stood in shocked silence. Pastor Helen was the first to move. She walked over to David, who had collapsed onto the floor, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. "Baby," she said gently, kneeling beside him. "You didn't know. None of this is your fault." "I should have seen it," David choked out. "I should have known. My mom tried to tell me, and I didn't listen. I chose Brianna over her." "What kind of son does that?" "The kind who wanted to believe in love," Helen said softly. "That's not a character flaw, honey. That's human." Uncle Ray cleared his throat. "Folks, I think this party's over. But before you go, I want you all to know, Maggie Sullivan is one of the strongest, smartest, most loyal women I've ever known. What she did today? That took guts. That took love. And if anyone has a problem with how she handled this, you can take it up with me." The crowd murmured agreement. Several people approached David, offering quiet words of support. Tyler and Amber stayed to help clean up the KFC buckets, their presence a quiet kindness. Diane approached Uncle Ray. "The DA's going to want your recording." "Already emailed it to them," Ray said grimly, "along with everything else Maggie gave me. That girl's going down hard." "Good," Diane said. "She deserves it." 7 days later, the law office of Walsh & Associates was all warm wood and leather chairs, the kind of place that radiated quiet competence. Maggie sat on one side of the conference table, Diane beside her. David sat to her left, looking thinner than he had a week ago, shadows under his eyes. Across from them, Brianna sat between a public defender who looked fresh out of law school and a court-appointed mediator. Brianna's designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple black dress. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail. She looked like what she was, someone who'd lost everything. The mediator cleared his throat. "We're here to finalize the settlement agreement. Ms. Fletcher has agreed to the following terms." He read through the list. Immediate vacating of the premises at 2847 Maple Avenue. Repayment plan of $5,000 monthly until all debts cleared. 5-year restraining order preventing contact with Margaret Sullivan. Cooperation with federal investigators. Guilty plea to reduced charges in exchange for probation instead of prison time. "Does everyone understand and agree to these terms?" the mediator asked. "Yes," Diane said. "Yes," Brianna's lawyer said quietly. David nodded, not trusting his voice. Brianna looked up, meeting Maggie's eyes for the first time. Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am. I'm sorry." Maggie studied her for a long moment. There was no satisfaction in this victory, no joy in watching this young woman's life implode. Just exhaustion and sadness. "I believe you're sorry you got caught," Maggie said finally. "I'm not sure you're sorry for what you did, but maybe someday you will be. Maybe someday you'll understand that people aren't ATMs, that trust isn't a commodity to exploit." Brianna flinched. "I hope you get help, Brianna. Real help, because this path you're on, it only ends one way." They signed the papers. Brianna left without another word, her public defender steering her toward the door. When they were gone, David finally spoke. "Mom, Baby, stop." Maggie turned to him, taking his hands. "You don't owe me an apology." "Yes, I do. I chose her over you. I let her treat you like garbage. I was so stupid." "You were in love," Maggie interrupted gently. "Love makes us blind sometimes, makes us see what we want to see instead of what's really there. I should have listened to you, to Uncle Ray, to everyone who tried to warn me." "Well," Maggie said with a small smile, "you're listening now. That's what matters." David pulled her into a hug, and for the first time since he was a little boy, he cried openly in his mother's arms. 6 months later, spring came to Portland like a promise kept. The roses in Maggie's garden bloomed in shades of pink and crimson, their scent filling the air with sweetness. The porch swing creaked in its familiar rhythm as Maggie and David sat side by side, drinking lemonade in the afternoon sun. David had moved back home 3 months ago. He'd started therapy, both individual and family sessions with Maggie. The divorce was almost finalized. He'd started a small software consulting business from the home office Maggie had helped him set up in the converted sunroom. "You know what's weird?" David said, breaking the comfortable silence. I'm happier now than I've been in years. Nothing weird about that, baby. You're free. I'm also 38 years old living with my mom, he said with a self-deprecating laugh. Best roommate I ever had. Maggie nudged his shoulder. You actually take out the trash without being asked. They sat in companionable silence, watching Tyler and Amber walk by with their golden retriever puppy. The couple waved and Maggie waved back. They'd become good friends over the past months. Sunday dinners, game nights, genuine connection. Uncle Ray's SUV pulled into the driveway. He'd taken to dropping by every weekend, usually with takeout and stories from his latest real estate venture. Family, Maggie had learned, wasn't just about blood. It was about who showed up. You know what Dad would say about all this? David asked suddenly. Maggie smiled. What? He'd say you're the strongest person he ever knew, and he'd be right. Your father knew I was stubborn as a mule, Maggie corrected. There's a difference. No, David said seriously. He knew you were strong, that you'd protect me even if I was too dumb to see I needed protecting. Maggie reached over and squeezed his hand. You weren't dumb, baby. You were trusting. That's not the same thing. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Maggie looked at her home, her hard-won, fought-for, promised to James home, and felt peace settle into her bones. She thought about a quote she'd seen once, something about how the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. She'd been through the fire. David had been through the fire, and they'd come out stronger for it. Hey, Mom, David said. Yeah, honey? Thank you for not giving up on me. Maggie pulled him close, this son of hers who'd been lost and was now found. Never, baby, not ever. The porch swing creaked, the roses bloomed, and Margaret Sullivan sat in the home she'd earned, surrounded by real love, the kind that protects, the kind that endures, the kind that sets you free. And that was worth more than any Instagram post, any designer bag, any illusion of perfection. That was worth everything.